he had captured the cat, so he intended to claim the 10 million won prize. She complimented his impressive actions, noting that the circumstances must be bizarre for him, yet he remained money-focused, indifferent to her observation stations. He proudly confessed that he was a money-driven fool. His joy halted abruptly when Fancy revealed she couldn't fulfill her promise. Furious, he demanded to know why she was altering their agreement. He even questioned if she regretted wagering 10 million won. Offering a compromise, he proposed to reduce his price. However, she reassured him that she was a woman of her word, intending to honor her promise as long as the malevolent spirit cat remained captive. Frustrated, Fancy seized the cat, reminding Tae-Sung that his payment hinged on the completion of his task. She pointed out that he was supposed to secure the cat, not a possessed person. In a fit of rage, he grabbed her cape, accusing her of insanity. He hotly disputed any agreement to the contrary, her irritation matching his fancy, retorted, asking him who he thought he was yelling at and whether he believed his tantrum would change the situation. Placing her hand on Sung's forehead, she ordered him to sleep. As a result, the spirit named Dueoksini left his body, and he collapsed, landing heavily on the ground. She contemptuously called him weak. Fancy then apprehended the ghost cat that had tried to escape but ended up torn to shreds. All the while, she lamented that overconfident shamans were losing their minds. The cat's owner coughed up blood. In agony, asked by her companion if she was all right, the woman bitterly vowed revenge on Fancy, blaming her for her cat's demise. An entity materialized and questioned if she would remain defiant. An elder advised them that their true identities had been discovered. Anticipating a vigorous defense of the phantasmagoria, the elder suggested they make haste and prepare themselves. They agreed respectfully. The elder declared that after 8 years it was time for them to engage in a deadly confrontation. In Sung's childhood, he was frequently bullied, labeled as homeless and malodorous. The adults gossiped about his mother, a single parent, a shaman who didn't know the identity of his father. He returned home in tears one day, seeking comfort from his mother. Tenderly, she asked why her little golden toad was upset. Her surprise was evident when he asked her to explain what single mother meant. His mother urged him to pay attention, elucidating that single mothers were remarkable individuals who did everything independent. This revelation left Sung and all. His mother comforted him, telling him not to cry too long, promised not to shed tears. Apologizing for his previous falsehoods, he knew his mother always put on a brave face for him, even when things weren't all right. His mother playfully suggested that if he sold talismans, he'd become wealthy. Tae-Sung excitedly suggested they could afford an apartment. His mother humorously retorted that their wealth wouldn't extend that far. He knew his mother was struggling because of him. The landlord's admonishment about their overdue rent reached his ears, and he witnessed his mother pleading for more time. However, she always maintained a cheerful disposition. Sung rationalized that poverty was bearable, lies were forgivable, and he didn't care if his mother was a shaman. He implored her to stay with him always. One day, he returned home eager to see his mother, but she was absent. He found a note in which she explained her departure, stating that she'd raised him to be self-sufficient and now sought to live freely. She wrote that if they were destined to meet again, they would. Young Tae-Sung was bewildered and wondered aloud about the hardships his mother must have endured in the cost of raising him. He concluded it must have been substantial. He speculated whether his mother felt she couldn't enjoy her life with him and decided to leave him behind to pursue a better existence. Defiantly, he vowed to surpass his mother's achievements, promising her a better life filled with money and other luxuries. He woke up in tears, realizing it was a dream. Fancy called out to him, chuckling, asking if he was awake and why he was crying. He responded with anger when he asked where he was. She informed him that he was at her place. He looked around, suspecting it was a shaman's house. A familiar sense stirred memories, reminding him of his childhood home filled with similar items. Suddenly, he noticed a figure adorned with talismans at the center of the room. Panicked, he questioned Fancy about the figure, wondering if it was a corpse. She corrected him, saying that the man Damaru was alive, but without a soul, hence his corpse-like appearance. She also revealed that Dimru was her boyfriend, leaving Tae-Sung in shock. He demanded to know who she truly was. Fancy melodramatically asked if he genuinely didn't recognize her. He knew her only as a shaman. YouTuber, she directed his attention to a point behind him, introducing herself as the reincarnation of Margaret, the greatest shaman. She claimed to have been sent to fulfill a prophecy. According to this prophecy, a god would be born on the 18th birthday of a boy with a lantern, and the star prediction is Tae-Sung was the owner of the phantasmagoria. He asked what it was, and she told him that she would explain. She asked if he had ever heard of memories. She suggested that they think about the moment when someone gets hit by a bus. If that person gets hit, he'll die instantly, but in that moment of facing death, many thoughts will pass through his head in an instant. Both thoughts are his memories signals triggered when he's facing death. This phenomenon is known as the passing of memories. The lantern is actually prepared for facing death. It sends a danger signal to its owner, helping them avoid danger in advance. One of the divine creations that existed before mankind is the phantasmagoria, and that's what he had in his mind. She told him that she was certain he had also experienced it many times. When he is in danger, he suddenly gets chills, goosebumps, and gains the ability to evade danger. She explained that all of these are flashes of hope designed to save him. He exclaimed that he couldn't believe something like this recited within him, but she reassured him that he was the hero of the prophecy and he was destined to become a god. Panicked, he asked her to confirm if he was really going to become a god. She confidently replied yes, adding that a god is the king of all ghosts and the one who can pacify all beings. He shouted in disbelief that he was going to be a god, but Fancy shouted back, urging him to accept his fate. Suddenly, he asks what, leaving Fancy confused. He cornered her, declaring that he didn't care whether he was a god or not. Then he demanded that she give him his 10 million won. The Fancy playfully asked him why he was hitting the wall, teasing if he was trying to win her over. She claimed she felt as though she were in trouble, like she was in front of her boyfriend. He retorted, asking if it appeared as though he were confessing, told her to stop speaking nonsense, and demanded his money back so he could pay an invoice. Fancy accused him of being overly obsessed with money. She teased him with some cash, asking if he wanted it, causing him to become excited, but then she unexpectedly punched him in the stomach, reminding him that he was daydreaming again. He crumbled to the ground, clutching his stomach in pain. Meanwhile, Fancy explained that phantasmagoria has a powerful ability as it's a vessel, but his phantasmagoria was too weak. She further explained that phantasmagoria imbues its owner's soul with an intense attachment to life. In his case, she suspected money was his obsession. Conversely, when he had money and felt secure, his judgment lapsed, just like now when he failed to dodge her punch. Fancy angrily told him there were people who despised his existence, like the cat they'd seen earlier, who were desperate to kill him. She criticized his laid-back attitude, considering his weakness, noting she was somewhat aware of his status as a deity. He replied that he didn't know whether he was a god or a ghost, and that he felt intrigued when he heard such things despite their lack of realism. He then asked if she knew his reality and told her that he was the owner of a wrecked motorcycle. He sadly mentioned that his birthday was the following day, which was supposed to be the day he officially owned his motorcycle. He confessed us that since the previous year he had been watching her, but she wasn't there anymore. If this was what love was like, he had no intention of experiencing it again. She replied that if he claimed he wasn't interested, there was nothing she could do. He noticed the sweet, extraordinary scent he'd never encountered before. Fancy told him that it was unfortunate. Had their conversation gone well, she would have given him a present. She then opened a case filled with money and asked him what she should do. His eyes widened at the sight of the money, envisioning bundles of 5 million won notes. He quickly calculated it all, realizing it totaled 100 million. He wondered if Fancy had prepared this because she felt guilty about their earlier money play, and if it was real. She asked him if he was interested. He replied while drooling and nosebleeding that it was a bit too much, she teased him, asking if he wanted to hear what she had to say. He asked back if he should listen. All of a sudden Fancy closed the case, shocking him. She told him to just wait for one day. She explained that tomorrow was his birthday or prophecy day. If he could safely get through it, she would give him all the money as a birthday present, but he doubted her, asking if he was expected to believe that he would receive 100 million won after enduring one day. Suspecting it to be another trick, Fancy reassured him, asking if he'd listen to her. He excitedly replied in the affirmative. As he was an obedient child, he mentioned he was already looking forward to tomorrow, his eyes fixed on the money case. Fancy knew it had been 8 years, and she had to succeed this time. She promised that she would turn him into a god, and she would use the god's power for her revenge on the shamans. She took off her sunglasses and told him their contract was signed. She then put the sunglasses on him as a present, which left him utterly confused. The following day at school, students and teachers were surprised by his new look. The teacher attempted to make him remove his sunglasses, but he walked away. His teacher asked him about the sunglasses, to which he replied that he'd had LASIK surgery. The teacher reminded him his eyesight was perfect, but he retorted that he wanted to have the vision of a hawk. The teacher, getting frustrated, accused him of playing games with his words, but he just stared past the teacher and saw a ghost. He punched the ghost, telling it he could see it well, which surprised his teacher. He noticed that after wearing the sunglasses, he could see ghosts very well. After observing a large entity, he nervously asked Fancy what it was and why he could see it. She replied that it wasn't his first time, and it was a spirit that had possessed him. He calmed down a bit, asking if it was the same entity that had possessed him when his head was on fire. He also noted that the entity was rather ugly. Fancy explained that it was a tool for viewing spirits, which allowed not only sight but also communication and contact. She added that enemies would try to attack him by sending humans possessed by ghosts, as they had done before. Attacks made by a possessed person are quite threatening, so he had to survive by identifying enemies with the sunglasses she'd given him. The prophecy date was the 1st of March in the lunar calendar at high noon. The next day he realized that while the day of prophecy didn't seem special, one thing was certain: someone was coming to kill him. He glanced at his classmates, wondering if one of them would be possessed by a ghost. He checked his phone, knowing the event would occur in the next 3 hours, but he wasn't concerned. He wouldn't be a part-timer anymore, and if he endured long enough, he'd get 100 million won. He confidently invited his enemy to come, promising to keep his patience until then. Suddenly, he saw someone outside the window. A clown man holding something in his back orders him to be untied. He complied and untied it, revealing an elder, which surprised and confused him and the students. The teacher asked the men who they were, stating that outsiders could not access the area without permission. The men just stared silently. The teacher told them to leave if they didn't have permission. As he did, the elder crept up to him, amid the teacher, and slowly devoured him. In the blink of an eye, the teacher was gone. The elder thanked them for the food, then shifted into a new persona, introducing itself as a general, ordering everyone to obey. This left him stunned. He wondered if they were shamans and why they were so brazen. Suddenly, he felt something biting him, ordering him to follow the general's command. He broke it in half, shocked to see his classmates' faces morph into the elder's face, drooling as they stared at him. Then they all shouted that they'd accept the general's orders. While staring at him, he awkwardly smiled because he finally understood what was happening. He remembered Fancy giving him a talisman. He accepted it while questioning what it was and if it signified he was to undertake a college entrance exam or something similar. She explained that it was a seal that contained spirits and that she had placed Dueoksini within it. Consequently, if he used it, he would become possessed by Dueoksini and transform, but he would need to ensure he only used it when dealing with those he had last time. He shook his head, informing Fancy he had no desire to do so, and that he found it hard to believe Dueoksini would enter his body, earning him a glare from Dueoksini. He then Asked Fancy if she could just protect him, she responded that she would love to, but had to keep an eye on Demru. Further explained that Dimru was a heavenly body any spirit could capture, and that prior to him Dimru had been the body of a man who had almost ascended to godhood. Furthermore, shamans were not only targeting him, but also Dimru. It was challenging to fight them and protect both him and Dimru at the same time, therefore they should proceed. With a faint operation, he agreed that this was a good plan. He stretched out his hand, asking Fancy for confirmation that his sole task was to stay alive the following day, believing it to be an easy task. Fancy gleeful confirmed his understanding, complimenting his intelligence. However, he cautioned her to remember one thing puzzling her. He pointed at her, declaring that he hated liars more than anything else in the world, and that if he discovered any deceit, he would do his utmost to sabotage her plan. She turned around, asking if he still bore a grudge and requesting a moment of his time. Subsequently, she handed him 10 million won, stating it was his advance payment. Much to his surprise, excited, he accepted the money, reminding himself of the feel of a substantial amount of cash. Fancy warned him not to be too greedy, as she didn't want her plan ruined due to his greed. He assured her that he was not concerned, and that he would consider it his down payment, as he was stronger than anyone else. Unfortunately, he was currently fleeing, crying out for assistance because he was overwhelmed. He could not believe all of his classmates were possessed, but suppose their number was adequate for a good fight. He halted his students from another room, emerged, repeating that they were following the orders of the general. He produced the talisman, wondering if the entire school had fallen under possession. As the students closed in on him, he had no choice but to place the talisman on his chest, gradually changing into his Dukshini form. The students surrounded him, attempting to seize him. However, having fully transformed into Dukshini, he retaliated by punching the nearest student, warning them all of them will be the sacrifices for his 10 million. As the students lunged to capture him, he sprang to meet them in the center, kneeing anyone in his path. He then grabbed the heads of 2 students, slamming them together while instructively commanding them to kiss each other. He landed, and the students tried to apprehend him again. However, he vanished and used his spiritual ability to grasp the entities that had possessed the students. Then he bit them in half, laughing as he beckoned the students to come to him. His 10 million won. A clown man informed his elder that Tae-Sung was fighting. Impressively, the elder responded that of course he was given, that soon was channeling to exceed his spirit, but it wasn't into full possession, merely a partial one. The student seized his feet, his waist, and his face, as the elder told the clown man that the memories in Sung's state were unstable, rendering him less functional. Amidst this, Tae-Sung wondered if he was that popular. He flung the students away, shouting at them not to touch him. He knew that even though they were weaker than the cat he had previously encountered, their number was vast, and he had a problem recognizing that it was going to be challenging to maintain this. Until midnight, his gadget rang. He put his Flex AirPods, paid for with his money, into his ears and answered the call. Fancy explained she had called because she was concerned, then inquired if he was doing well, since she presumed there wasn't an issue given that he was still alive. Angrily, he asked her what she meant by no problem, and informed her that it was not just one person, but hundreds that were possessed. He then questioned why Jackson was using all the students. She asked if he was referring to Jangsum, the great general, by any chance. When he confirmed, she explained that Jangsun was incredibly annoying and had 3 faces each with different abilities. Therefore, to free the students from his control, he would have to break its face. She then informed him that they had sent him a gift and that he should enjoy the fight on his way. She then hung up, causing him to panic and attempt to stop Fancy. He turned around, wondering why he had been talking and why he had been cut off mid-sentence. While he was about to punch the ground shattered, propelling the nearby students away. He then jumped out through the ceiling, gradually descending from the building. He landed in front of Jangsun and the clown man, who were both taken aback. He looked up at Jangsun, shouting that he needed to swiftly destroy those three faces. He lunged at Jang-sum, ready to attack, but noticed something attacking him from the side. He turned back and saw the clown man protecting Jang-sum.